You know, we talk about numbers in this crisis. 1 trillion. Do you realize that if since the day that Christ was born, you would have put $1 million every single day into the bank, today you would not have reached 1 trillion. And we talk about 9 to 13 trillion or something like that. That is money we're going to borrow, not just from our kids, but we borrow it from our grandchildren, my grandchildren. So we have an issue here that has to do with the legitimacy of our policies. We live in times that we are looking very much to protect that what is already established. If you think about it, the world as we know it is divided in two ways. One which will say, crisis, what crisis? I read about it, but I don't feel it. And the other part of the world that will live with the consequences of a crisis for a long time to come. That is not an accident. That is a choice. And we talk about many of these choices nowadays, because we are making, as we speak, fundamental choices. The crisis has three elements. Yes, it's the financial economic crisis. And we played roulette and we lost. And we have to pay for it. The second crisis is the climate change crisis. And we hope that it will go away in the knowledge that it won't. We hope desperately that it will go away if we just talk about it. And we do little things at the side. But it won't go away. Now, in the beginning, there's of course resistance to accept that you have a problem. Think about your own situation in the family. If there is a problem somewhere, the first thing people do, basically they ignore it. Basically, they argue that it's really not as bad as it looks. And that's exactly what people have done with the climate change crisis. And then came a very intelligent, very good report in the UK from a guy who was called Lord Stern. He's an econometrist. And he said, I don't know whether there is a scientific proof, and I don't care whether there is a scientific proof for climate change, man-made or not man-made. I'm going to calculate what the cost is, that if it happens, what the cost is to deal with the consequences. And he came back and he said, the cost is so high, the world cannot afford it. So whether you believe in climate change as an issue or not is a personal matter. On a business level, the Globe Inc., we have to take an insurance. Because that's what insurance is all about. Things that may not happen, but if they happen are so catastrophic that you insure yourself in case of. And that's how he has argued in probably the best written report that I've ever seen on climate change, why we have to take action right now. It is not because you believe it, it's because it's your responsibility for a risk avoidance type of activity, not to gamble with everything we have. And then comes the third crisis, probably the most difficult one, a crisis of confidence. We have shaken the world to the extent that everybody who claims to be an expert is in bad shape today. Experts are no longer believed. People in positions to know, in positions to lead, are under suspicion. And if you look to the list of people they trust, they being the ones who have been interviewed, the World Economic Forum every 2 years does a survey. It's a very interesting survey. The survey says, who do you trust? And what you see is that opinion leaders are now the bottom of the list of people trusted. And on the top of the list is the mayor, the notary, If we die, we have, of course, to go somewhere to make sure that we do the right thing with the inheritance. And then family and friends. If you're going to travel, and you go on the internet nowadays, because you want to go to Hong Kong and find yourself a good and nice hotel, it used to be that you go to a website where somebody with a trustworthy face would look you in the eye and say, I'm the expert, I'll tell you where to go. No more. If you live here in San Francisco, you go to the website and it says, everybody in San Francisco has been in Hong Kong, tells you where to go. You know nothing about those individuals, you know nothing about their lifestyle, you know nothing about their previous experience with hotels, but it is more trusted to listen to the audience in general than to the experts. And business in particular has a big mountain to climb. I was very interested to see this chart over there, what business needs to do. The one word that I was missing is the most important word, and that's employment. If you look to anger in society, if you look to disappointment in society, and whether you go to China, whether you go to Brazil, or whether you stay here in the US, the one thing people will say is, what happens with my job? What happens with the certainty of all those years' hard work? Going out of the door for something I had no influence on, and have no power to influence in the first place. And what do all those business leaders do to protect my job, my position, my family, my lifestyle? So bring the three dots together. We do have a financial crisis. Whether we like it or not, we have to deal with it. And deal means pay. We have to pay for it. And on the global scale, it's very interesting to see what happens. We're all very happy that China is growing. And we use the surplus of China to finance the consumption in the West. Well, the surplus of China is because in China, poor people save, because there is no social security, and therefore, for the old day, they have only one alternative, and that's to save money. And that money is invested in the West. Is that a sustainable model? Don't think so. So on the financial construct that we had for the last 25 years, we need to go back to the drawing board. And it was clear, very, very clear, that we couldn't do that with the leadership that we had in place in the world up until a year ago. You remember those pictures of the G8? And for those of you who are historians, you know that those were the guys who were the winners of World War II. So, in a way, World War II ended in Pittsburgh 3 weeks ago, when the transfer was from the G8 to the G20. And the G20 just reflects the reality of the world today, which means the power is more evenly spread, and the economic capability of people around the world has changed fundamentally because of one reason. Talent, as we know, has no passport, has no color, has no gender. Talent is talent. But for a long time, you could be the best talent in the world. If you wouldn't physically live next to the economic activity, you were toast. You could not monetize your brain. And here comes digitalization and global broadband networks. And all of a sudden, wherever you live in the world, if you are capable of contributing in the knowledge economy, you can participate. So you can stay home and still work with people 5,000 miles away. And that has changed the landscape fundamentally, because organizations go for the best brains wherever they are and link them together, which is great news for the couple of billion people who were excluded so far, and means adaptation for those who were in the privileged position of being very near the economic activities in the first place.